ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm George Binns, and guest this evening is Kevin O'Reilly. And if you've been following us for the last several weeks, we've done a number of shows on global warming and climate change and all that good stuff. And this is another continuation of that. So, Kevin, you and I have traded words about this, and I have a great deal of suspicion about the accuracy of a lot of this climate change, global warming business. And in our discussions, I guess the question comes down to, what are we really talking about in my perspective? And that comes down to, what is really the climate change that we expect? When's it going to happen? And what else could be causing it besides increase in carbon dioxide, which I think is kind of a small influence on the atmosphere and not the big swinger. And you have a different opinion.
I do. And your question was about 6 parts to the question.
Yeah.
One of them was, when do we expect this? And I can't answer that. The temperature should increase gradually over the next century, and beyond that, it could be. Again, in my presentations, I talked about the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Estimates they range them because, as you rightly pointed out, these models are not 100% accurate. They can't be. You're predicting the future, and that's a difficult thing to do. There's many variables. So they have lower ranges and upper ranges, and they've been using 2100 as a benchmark, like what it'll be like in 2100. And the ranges could be 1 degree centigrade, another degree, or it could be 2 or 3 degrees. And so there are variations. And I think one thing that you and I can agree on is we don't want to have it go up a lot. So I'll come back to a question for you on that. And the last part of your question, I've forgotten. So what was the last thing you asked?
Well, basically, we get down to the question of when we expect these things to happen. We discussed that a little bit.
Yeah.
And, how much confidence do we have in the fact that it's all caused by CO2?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Mostly caused by CO2.
Right, okay. So again, I have argued that these natural variations are still there. They are absolutely, I have never argued that CO2 is the only factor. It seems to be getting more dominating, and I think that's worth paying attention to. So I think that's important. One of the graphs that I don't remember if I showed, shows, which I could show again if you want me to, shows that the solar activity has been dropping. The solar cycles go every 11 years or so. They drop, and yet the temperature continues to go up. So are you interested in seeing that graph? Because it doesn't matter to me.
Oh, okay, put it on now.
All right, let me see. It says host disabled participant. Okay.
No, your screen sharing is on.
Okay, let me try it again. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. And since I'm the only participant, I think that was me.
Yeah, how the hell did I do that?
Should I try it again?
Okay, man, let me stop the sharing. Interestingly enough, today I got from the library a book, Zoom for Dummies, and that has there's going to be one for.
Yeah, I know how you feel, because the last part of the debate with Frank Bellini, I thought I had shared my screen, and I was talking about all these things on the screen, and when I looked at it later, it wasn't on there. So this is hard for everybody.
Okay. So can you do it now? I just changed the.
Yeah, okay. All right. So let's see, share. So what I was talking about that one graph. So let me see if I can find that graph. It's the one about the little ice age. No, the pause. Yeah. Okay. So this this graph shows the temperature going up, and you can see where, you know, they're kind of correlated. And then after about 1980, at least, or 85, the solar irradiance starts dropping, even though the temperature has gone up. So that indicates that, to me, that it's CO2 is becoming more important as time goes on. It's more significant. I would say it's dominant. You probably wouldn't, but I think it even people that disagree would say, yeah, it's becoming more important. And as I showed in the debate, even some of the skeptics are saying, yeah, no, it has an effect. You know, when Roy Spencer says, he's one of the leading climate deniers, if I can use that term. And he says, we've known for 100 years that CO2 causes the temperature to go up. So I think we agree on that. The question is, how dominant and how much of a threat is it? So I'd like to get your response there. I'll stop sharing. Got one other thing to do. So do you think I mean, is there some level of CO2, you know, 1,000 parts per million, where you'd say, okay, wait a minute, no, that's a real threat. We can't have that. Is there any level where you'd say, yeah, it's a problem?
Well, part of the difficulty I have with CO2, several features of it that bother me. First of all, if you're looking at the global warming effect of the atmosphere, it's 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 33 degrees centigrade. It's a big number compared to the 1 degree or 1.5 degree that the usual charts show. And you look at the story that, okay, CO2 is a significant contributor. Well, if we're talking about a 33 degrees C increase, and CO2 over the period of time that everybody's focusing on has gone up by 48%, from 215 parts per million to about 415 right now. I would imagine CO2 would have a much bigger effect. And when you get into some of the issues about radiation absorption, it turns out that adding more CO2 doesn't necessarily block more radiation. There's an exponentially decreasing amount of effect of any of these radiation absorbing gases, CO2 included. And when you get into some of the details of, well, why does the atmosphere behave the way it is? The finger keeps getting pointed back to water vapor, either in the form of humidity or in the form of clouds. So I have a hard time understanding how this really minuscule part of the atmosphere, which normally it's around 0.4%, which is what 415 parts per million works out, can have that much of an effect. And that's one of the basic problems I have with it.
Okay, so my original question was, is there some level of CO2 parts per million that you'd say, yeah, okay, that, and I assume your answer is no. It could be 1 million parts per million, and you don't. It's not going to have any effect.
Because what I keep coming back to is it's high school physics, the Fraunhofer lines. That way back when somebody was trying to figure out what's the sun made of, and they did a spectrographic analysis of sunlight. And they noticed in there a series of black lines, and those are the Fraunhofer lines. They're narrow and black. And if you match up all the various lines, you can figure out what elements are present in the sun. And the point I keep coming back to is that they're black. There's a point in time where they absorb everything that they can for their narrow frequency. And again, keep coming back to Einstein's theory, the one he got the Nobel for, that says these resonant frequencies are triggered by a very specific frequency of light, and other frequencies of light really don't impact them. It goes right on by. So
okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can go on for hours. So you got your turn.
Well, just to be clear, if it went up to 2,000 parts per million, you don't think it would matter?
Not to radiation. When you get up into the big numbers, I think it's around 4% is when people start to notice it. It affects your breathing. You get to 10, 11%, and it gets to be fatal. So those are real big numbers. And
are you arguing that? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you arguing, because I think you said in your last program that, yeah, there's a correlation between CO2 or greenhouse gases and temperature. You're not arguing that there's no correlation.
No, what I said in the last show wasn't that there's a correlation. It is proposed that it's a correlation, and I have a problem with that analysis because if you look at the CO2 curves, they're monotonically increasing. They continually go up. And you look at that curve of that plot of mean temperature, there's a flat spot in that thing, a pause between about 1890 and about 1930 or so. Mm-hmm. Then the temperature pops up during World War II. Then there's another pause from about 1950 through about 1970. Then the temperature goes up again. And then there's another pause from about 1998 through about 2012, 2013. And then the temperature appears to go up some more from it. So the temperature increase curve that is being used is not monotonically increasing like the CO2 curve. So okay. I have a problem with saying that's a correlation because there should be some explanation of why it doesn't have an effect for 40, 50 years.
Okay. So two things came up. One, my question was about, and I'll see if I can share the screen again. Let's see, how do I do that? The one that says share screen, Kevin. Okay. So this is the one I'm talking about, not the recent pauses one. So I'll deal with the pauses question in a second, but it's this one that I guess I'm asking, do you not, whoops, now how did that happen? Oh, brother.
Twitchy.
Yeah. Okay, I had the right screen up here, and then I hit, where is that little sucker? This one, right here. Okay, I'm not going to try and maximize it because I got out of it.
Okay, yeah.
So you can see that the blue line and the red lines go up and down over 400,000 years. When one goes up, the other one goes up. That's a correlation. Yes or no?
Yeah, that appears to be a correlation. The other part of the problem with this curve is you notice the red line goes up and down first, then the blue line follows it.
Take a look inside the black circle.
Yeah.
And the blue line went up first.
That one it did, yeah. The others, they're going up together. And then the other ones, if the blue line is leading.
Okay, the blue line leads inside the circle, and the red line leads going down. It never leads going up. They're running either directly over each other. There's no line going up where the blue line isn't leading.
Okay.
Well, that implies causation. And then when you have experiments in labs that show that greenhouse gases, CO2 and methane and all, absorb heat. I didn't say blanket now.
No, I know. Yeah, you
Okay.
don't. But again, the point I was making in the show that I did was that that's a very common phrase I've heard many times. We just had a meeting a couple of months ago for the city of Beverly where they were talking about the impact of rising ocean water on the local beach areas and so forth. And the first thing the gentleman from the state says is CO2 acts like a blanket. Okay, it's not, you haven't used it, I'll grant you that, but it's a common phrase that bothers me.
Okay. So there's some of these technical details I think bother you. Do you want people to say exactly what they mean and get the science right? And I get that.
Yeah, and I think that part of the problem is by what I refer to as dumbing it down, is confusing people and making you think other things are happening when they're really not.
Well, maybe not. Because somebody's using the wrong terminology doesn't mean that they're misunderstood or actually have
Well,
factually incorrect information.
well, okay, we get into that. One of my favorites is people talk about green energy. Fine. Really, what they're talking about is clean energy. And really, what they're talking about is energy with little or no carbon dioxide emissions. So if they're using these terms green and clean, I get back to the point of if you've ever taken a course in biology and gotten as far as photosynthesis, you quickly find out that, hey, carbon dioxide is plant food. What's unclean about plant food? And this is what bothers me, because when you say something is unclean, you imply, oh, it's nasty. We got to do something about it. But in reality, carbon dioxide is not unclean.
Okay. This is, again, not something I never
used. That's the kind of stuff that
term.
bothers me.
Okay. Yeah. So these things bother you, but I didn't say blanket or unclean.
No,
so
I understand. Okay. And again, when I did the show about what's really climate change, I'm addressing not only the issues that you have brought up that bother me, but also ones more general than that, that is in the common vernacular of climate activists, not necessarily you, but the general grouping of them.
Okay.
Especially the mayor. He's forever talking about we got to go green and we got to go clean energy.
Okay. So let me show. So the second part of what you said was the pause, these pauses. And in my note to you, I dealt with that question. Do you remember what I said? I can repeat it.
Repeat it.
Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if I need to do this. So let me stop sharing here for a second. I can go back to it if I need it.
Yeah.
So in there, I said that why would we expect anything else? If CO2 is one factor, maybe it's the dominant factor. Maybe it's increasingly becoming the dominant factor, but it's one among many. So we have El Nino and La Nina, we have ocean currents, we have the solar cycles, volcanoes, and we have greenhouse gases, actually sometimes, not man-made, and then we have this one with man-made. And why would we expect it to go up in a straight line or even close to a straight line? Of course, there's going to be pauses. If you invest in the stock market, or if you lose it, look at GDP. Is it going up? Yeah. Did it go up last year? Well, no, but next year. So, I mean, I guess if there's multiple causation, what's happening is completely logical. If you pull out, as Frank did, not to pick on him, that some people do, and you pick out the pause, you're cherry picking. You're not looking at the general trend, which is up. And that trend is going up, even though the solar cycle is going down. Now, solar doesn't have that big an effect. But I guess I don't know why you think that that's a big problem, that it sometimes pauses. Of course it pauses. I wouldn't have expected anything else.
Well, again, we get back to the fundamental question of how significant is the CO2 level on influencing this thing called median temperature.
Okay,
and
so
if CO2 continues to go up and the median temperature doesn't go up, the implication is, hey, something else is interacting there.
at that point, so let me go back to my slide. At that point in the 90s, it could be a number of things. So let me see, how do I do this? Let's try this. No, that doesn't work. So here's the 1998 into 2012, and it's flat. And you pointed out several other ones.
That is a pattern comes across here.
What's that?
Can you see my arrow on
your arrow?
Yeah, no, it doesn't show.
No.
Yeah, this is your screen. Well, if you look at that chart from about 1880, 1890 out through about 1920, 1930, it's kind of flat in there. It pops up, and then there's another flat spot just after World War II for another 20, 30 years. And these are the things that bother me about saying we got a correlation. But
we saw a graph of 800,000 years with a correlation on it. It's clearly correlated.
It looks like it's correlating, but you're looking at it at a much less refined scale, a much less exaggerated scale.
What do you mean?
The quality of the data you have on that 800,000 year, or the density of the data that you have on that 800,000 year graph is not like the density of the data you've got here.
Okay, there's more monitors.
Let me finish. Part of the argument that you've been using is that, things aren't that much different, except all of a sudden it's going up very, very quickly, which is that little spike you show on that previous curve from about 2015 up through 2016 through 2020. So a lot of stuff is getting hung on the hat of the rate of change of the increase in this median temperature. And I still have a problem with median temperature. Back to the question of where do you stick the thermometer? But anyway.
Okay. What? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So there's a lot of issues that I have a problem with, which is why I did that other show. And
okay. In terms of the, in terms of the monitors, I thought that was an intriguing question, and I looked up the monitors, and they use. I think I mentioned this in the debate with Frank. They use 5,500 to 7,000 monitors, and then I looked up because you said, 70% of the world is water.
Yeah.
They use 4,500 monitors on the ocean, plus the satellites, and they're doing more with every decade. They're doing more. I mean, if your point is they don't have it completely right, I completely concede that point. You would have to have one every square meter to get it completely right. So you keep hammering away at the point that the models are not 100% accurate. And I conceded that point right off the bat. You don't have to make the point, because I concede that. I think everybody on the climate activist side would say, we know they're not completely accurate. But then I showed a graph.
Well, before you go off too far on that one, says, okay, you say they're not completely accurate, but how do you demonstrate they're accurate enough to make
by hindcasting? It was on my slide. They take tell me this isn't fair. They take a prediction in 1980, and then they come back in 2000 and say, how close did we come? I can send you the article on this. They've done it with all the major ones. So IPCC and various groups. and they keep looking at them by comparing what they said to what happened. If they were predicting in 1980 the temperature would be X, and it turns out it's Y, then it wasn't that accurate. So then they go back and try more variables. It turns out they're fairly accurate. They're not completely accurate. 5 of them were above the observation points, and 3 of them were below. So it's not like they're way off. The graph that Frank showed that they were completely off. And then I deconstructed that graph. You might remember the graph was not, it wasn't about what was going on, the observations on Earth. It was 25,000 feet up, and it was in the tropics. That graph was deceptive. It wasn't a valid thing to show people out there and your viewers. I mean, that's wrong to show something like that. It's completely off. Maybe these other ones are off too, but I'll wait and see if you can show that they're off. They know that the models are not accurate completely because there are too many variables. They're just too many variables.
Yeah.
And they have their monitors every 4 degrees, I think. So it's square kilometers, no question about it.
The surface of the Earth is over 200,000 square miles.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And you know that even in Beverly, if we got a temperature here, you go across the bridge to Salem, you got a different temperature, and that's what, 5 miles away at best. So the variation in temperature over the surface of the Earth is a lot of numbers that I just don't see anybody who's got a snowball's chance in the proverbial hot place of collecting. So, except,
what do you think about the hindcasting, where they compare the model to what actually ended up being observed?
I don't have any experience with it, so I can't comment on it. I don't have any knowledge of what it is. I haven't seen any of the results.
Yes, you did. You saw the results because I showed graphs of the results.
I understand. You showed me just the pictures, not the details of what went into it.
So I'll send you the article.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Yes, I would.
Okay.
And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we've had a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoyed watching us. And hey, we might do this again. This is, what else can you do during COVID? We can get away with it without a mask.
That's right.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, if there's somebody out there that's got a different opinion and would like to have their chance to express it on TV, at the end of the show, you'll see the credits. Next to my name is my email address. And send me an email. And if you can't find it, go through BevCam. They can find me. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. And we'll see you next time.